Hello, sportsmen. Hey, we've had people call us and they say, how come you're not getting outdoors and doing some outdoor activities right now? Well, doggone it, for you folks, I've done a little essay on the beauty of the outdoors in March. So we're going to bring that to you along with a home video. We're also going to take you fishing on the Great Lakes. We have a recipe and more. So stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. You're watching The Practical Sportsman. Yes, that sound you're hearing is a deer snarfling down corn. Spence McElroy from Florence, Wisconsin took this video in his backyard in 1990. Ran a microphone cable from his house to the corn feeder. That's how he was able to document the noise a deer makes when it's chewing corn. Now, deer are quite active in the early evening and the few hours after dark. One thing they do around food is fight. The does use their hooves against each other, and their hooves are hard and sharp on the ends. The bucks use their antlers. Now, if these bucks were seriously fighting, they wouldn't take any breaks. They'd fight continuously, but they seem to want to make sure their antlers are engaged properly before they start pushing each other. This pulling apart and running, that's not serious fighting. That's fun fighting. They lock their antlers again, but don't push for very long before they take another breather. Of course, check to see if anybody's watching them. The way they clinch reminds me of big-time wrestling. And this one buck pulls away, looks like he's doing a moonwalk for the crowd. A lot of the big group feeding activity is at night, but this sparring isn't something that a lot of people see at the end of January.
I've never seen them fight like this. I think they're playing more than anything. It's late in the season. Getting ready to lose their horns or something. Really acting goofy.
Spence McElroy caught some interesting moments with his video camera. Bucks that fought, but seemed to be playing. Their sparring at times gets a little out of hand. They hurt each other now and then. This buck appears to be torn up on his shoulder, but now he wants to eat, and we can hear the sound of corn against deer teeth cutting through the cold winter night. Well, Mr. Producer.
What?
Here we are in March. People are calling saying, why aren't you guys getting outdoors and show what's going on now?
As a matter of fact, Jim, talked to you last week. I'm not going to use your last name. But fortunately, we're not going to get outside very much.
You know, but I'm all for it. In fact, Matt and I, we put together an essay on March. I think you'll like it. I call it March Splendor. The month of March. What splendor! The beauty of gray skies, gray ice, ice that won't hold a human being for more than a second or two. The air is humid, and on a 30-degree day, it feels like zero. You can walk along the shorelines of our southern lakes. The shore ice is melting. The ice is rotting. Ice fishing, well, that's out of the question. So let's walk in the woods. The brown woods. No leaves, no grass, gray sky, a lot of dirt, melting snow, dirt turns to mud. What can a person do with the splendor of March? So next week, can I do March Splendor too?
All you want. You and Matt, go ahead and take March. I'll take June and July.
June and July, we did a neat fishing trip in September though, that hasn't been on the air yet. And it's one when we went fishing with Big Jon Emery. Oh, Charlie, as I recall, it was beautiful. Sun coming up. When you see a cabin cruiser motoring slowly across Lake Michigan against an orange sun, it's probably trolling some lures behind downriggers. That's the Great Lakes way to fish, but you don't need a big boat. Lots of anglers use small boats, 14, 16-footers, and as long as they stay fairly close to shore, small boats are a perfectly safe way to fish. On this day, it was the last week in September. We're off the port of Manistee, and we're fishing in the Big Jon boat. The mate is Bob Allen, and he fishes a lot with Big Jon Emery. They fish tournaments all spring, summer, and fall. Matt Radzalowski was with us, learning the ropes of videotaping. And here's Big Jon Emery, the man who became a legend. He started making Big Jon downriggers when salmon fishing was born in Michigan. His first downriggers were simple hand crank jobs, but now he makes everything up to the state-of-the-art electrics. You don't crank anything, you merely push a button. These units will even tell you the temperature.
What you're looking for, if we were running out, for instance, and we're going to try to find steelhead, what we'd be doing is looking for an abrupt temperature break. Say, for instance, it was 62, 63, and all of a sudden we hit a 5-degree break. That means that the water underneath us is colder. And that's what we're looking for, you know, and the closer to the ideal temperature, the 49, 50, you know, in the 46 range, those areas of the break.
The unit on the downrigger cable is a micro-troll speed and temperature gauge.
This is a temperature control, and it takes the speed and the temperature at the ball.
Okay.
So whatever depth this is at, whether you're at 20 or 120 feet, it will give you the speed and the temperature up on the dashboard.
First mate Bob Allen lowers the micro-troll with the downrigger ball, and the temperature reads out 48.6 degrees at, 48.7 degrees. Different depths, different temperatures.
46.8.
Okay, that's at 45 feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to come up 10 feet.
How are you coming up?
I'm going to take a temperature. I want them to say we're going to take temperature every 10 feet and see where it's at. What do you got?
What's that?
50.8.
In 10 feet. You went from 45 to 50.8. Okay. Well, tell me how thick the thermocline is here. Okay, what do you got there?
53.6.
53.6. Okay, so from 25 to 45 feet, and you could even get warmer than 53. In other words, you could come up and you could pick them out of a warmer temperature yet. And sometimes when they start getting ready to run the river, you will find them, and that's when they start darkening up, the Chinook salmon, and you will find them starting to turn color from being in the warm water. So that's one time that the Chinook do not adhere, and the silver salmon or the coho don't necessarily adhere to the temperature factor, is when they're getting ready to run the river. They will sometimes feed out of temperature.
This is how water temperature helps you find hungry fish. Now, the squid is a lure that is often used for lake trout behind a dodger, which is a big flasher that darts back and forth a few feet in front of the squid. An alternative to downrigger fishing for getting a lure down deep is to clip a weight on the line about 65 feet ahead of the lure. This is a poor man's type of downrigger. 1 pound of weight, 65 feet of line to the lure, trolled at 2.5 miles an hour, will take the lure down 50 feet. Now, another option is Leadcore Line, which is obviously heavy line. It sinks. You run a long monofilament leader to troll a lightweight spoon. Now, the heavy line gets the lure down deep. The more line you let out, of course, the deeper it goes. Now, Leadcore used to be a lot more popular than it is today. Downriggers are preferred, where you clip the line to some sort of mechanism that will release the line when a fish hits. 7-pound weight stays on the downrigger cable. You fight the fish then without any weights on the fishing line. Now, this downrigger cable has a ball, a release, and a micro-troll temperature unit.
You got him.
See how I seen that right away?
I think you let go.
He's on.
Oh, he's not. He just, is that a shaker?
I don't know. I think the first one was a shaker, John.
That fish is still, that's a shaker. He's just running towards the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little shaker. I can tell he's running towards the boat. Easy, now easy. Let me release that fish. one hurt him.
A shaker is a small salmon or trout. It shakes the line, but it's too small to put up much of a fight.
Boy, he's hooked good. I'm afraid he's hooked too good to, oh, now we got it. Okay.
A flick of the wrist, it's back in the water. We'll catch him when he's full grown.
Away he goes.
From Big Jon to our own Little John, but that's only when they're standing side by side.
Not tremendously big.
But it's a fish.
That's right. We'll take it after the last.
Well, John Ford had a much larger fish on than Matt had hooked earlier, but it wasn't a big fighter. Made us think it was maybe a large shaker, but it was actually decent size. But unfortunately, we couldn't keep it.
You got it? He's going to unhook him right off the back here.
Remember, we're fishing at the end of September, past Labor Day. Lake trout season closes in Lakes Michigan and Huron on Labor Day. Well, how do we know this is a lake trout? Well, it has a white mouth. Trout have white mouths, salmon have dark mouths. It's easy to tell them apart. Lake trout stay near the bottom, and it was caught on a deep running downrigger. Next fish we'd catch was on a different rig yet. One where on the surface where the steelhead trout are more likely to be feeding. This is a little otter, an inline planing board. John Ford used it for night walleye fishing in Lake Leelanau. It attaches right to your fishing line, pulls your line out to the side away from the boat, and when a fish hits, the plug pops out of the release, and the board slides down the line to the lure or to a stopper or to a barrel swivel in the line so it doesn't interfere so much with the battle. You can see by the rod tips that the planer boards are working. Big Jon Emery designed these so that they actually skip on the water. They don't pull evenly like a big planer board. That gives irregular motion to the lure, and that catches fish. Notice here how I'm working the rod and reel. I'm not pumping the rod back hard. I'm pulling it back slowly and reeling as fast as I can when I lower the rod. I'm trying to keep constant pressure on the fish rather than pumping and relaxing to pull the fish in. This is especially important with a fish that shakes its head or jumps.
He's right behind.
I've been extra careful with this fish for one particular reason.
Oh! Beautiful shot.
When you pump a fish hard, then slacken the line, you'll cause the hook to widen the hole in the fish's mouth, and then that lure can pop out when the fish shakes its head or jumps like that one did. It's a little trick I learned from Captain Ron Levitan in Lake Erie, and it works. Constant pressure instead of irregular pumping. That's one key to landing a higher percentage of the fish you hook.
Still fairly green, but
Okay.
still green. We'll let him if we can.
Bring him up further, Fred. Crank him up. Crank him up. Crank him up. Bring him up. Bring him up, Fred. Yeah, bring him up. Bring him up, Fred. Back him up. Back him up. You got him. He's in.
Nice fish, Fred.
Ooh.
Do I want it? Yeah, I think so. I think we'll keep him.
Yeah, this fish ended up very soon on my grill. Took me 3 nights to finish it off, delectable with a wood fire taste. Now, I noticed in watching this videotape, when I'm wearing a hat, I look like I have as much hair as Bob Allen does. Well, that's not why I wear the hat, though. It's the sunburn factor. Hair doesn't get sunburned, but hairless heads do get sunburned. Now, this is a steelhead trout. Notice the white mouth. That's how we can tell it's a trout, caught right near the surface on an inline planer board. Now, we'll hear more of Big Jon Emery's fishing theories on future shows. He's had more experience than most.
Oh!
Even if my head would get a little sunburned, I'd love to be out there this weekend, wouldn't you? Here's a salmon recipe you can use with canned salmon or salmon that you boil for 10 minutes or so. Sharon Foster from Fenton calls it Sharon Salmon Fettuccine. You cook up a package of fettuccine and drain it. Now in a skillet, melt a 1/4 cup of oleo and brown 2 cloves of chopped garlic. When the garlic is light brown, add 1 cup of half and half, an 8-ounce can of salmon, or boil up a ½ pound of salmon from the freezer. Use this instead of canned. Put a dash of pepper on top and stir this until it begins to bubble. That should take about 3 minutes or so. Then add a ½ cup of Parmesan cheese. Stir it for another minute. remove it from the heat, and toss it with the cooked fettuccine. This is a great way to make an elegant salmon dish that everybody will like. Sharon's Salmon Fettuccine is printed in the March issue of the Practical Sportsman Guide.
I got into my blind. I got in early. Unlike a lot of people, they leave about, 8, 9 o'clock. I got in about 6 o'clock, and I had about 2 thermoses of coffee. And I think, well, geez, got to beat about 8. And I think, well, I'm going to get up and drain some off, pay my water bill. So I get ready to leave, and I look out, and there's a doe in this little lane there, and she's just browsing there. And she gets a little finicky, and she runs off, and I look over to the side there, and there's this guy here, and he's in the brush doing this here, and that's all I can see is just his horns. So I'm sitting there, and now I really got to go. So I'm sitting there and watching him, and he ain't coming out, and I'm getting all nervous. I figured I could have walked to Detroit by the time he got out. And finally, he steps out in the lane, I just shoot him, and that's all it was.
That's all it was, and then you did what you had to do, and...
No, I forgot all about that.
Is that right? Well, very good. John Du Bois from Midland. You got an 8 point with a 21.5-inch spread. Thank you. Oh, where do we get these stories? Well, that's why we hold our Hunting and Fishing Awards banquets every winter. Now, the last banquet of the year is going to be March 8th, Saturday night, Eagles Hall in Lansing. It's the awards for the shotgun hunters. Those big racks at the banquet are going to be the biggest racks in the state. These are the racks from Big Buck Night, from the Mill Creek Buck Pole. This banquet features a trophy wall that won't quit. And after eating a huge meal catered by Coils of Houghton Lake, they bring everything, including all the carved beef and all the desserts you can eat. The hunters come up on stage with their racks. We hear their stories and tape them for this program. So that's where we get the hunting and fishing trophy tales. They're all taped at our winter banquets. And we still have tickets available for the March 8th banquet. If you want to join us and see trophy tales being videotaped in front of a live audience, give us a call for ticket information. We'd love to have you join us. Now for the Splendor of March guide report. There is fishing to be done. There are some winter activities left. Let's start here at Cadillac, Lakes Cadillac and Mitchell. Steve reports they're getting some pike and walleye and crappie, some good-sized crappie. Down at Paramarquette River, some steelhead are being caught, 1 or 2. At Whitehall, look at this, steelhead and suckers. So the sucker runs are starting. That's the first fish that really gets kicking in gear in March. Saugatuck, steelhead and browns are fair. Now, this is not out in the open water. This is not the trolling stuff we showed you. This is off the pier. Trenton Lighthouse, this whole corner of the state, bad ice. Fishing is slow. Same thing at Lake St. Clair up in Linwood. The thing at Linwood, south of Linwood to Bay City, Franks reports that the ice is decent and they're catching some walleye, catching some perch, but north of Linwood, no good. Ice is blown out, wind has taken it out. Oscoda, that's Au River here, they're getting some perch. Van Etten Lake, steelhead are good, 10-pound average on the Au Sable at Alpena. Still catching some pike. Now this is through the ice, getting some perch, decent-sized perch. Indian River reports the steelhead are starting up in Drummond Island. Crossed the bridge here and got lots of snow, almost too much snow, but the snowmobile trails are still excellent. Muskong Bay, the fishing has been slow because of the weather. Getting a couple coho off Marquette. Lake trout limits at the west end of the UP. According to Don at Scott Superior Inn, and up in Houghton, they're getting, the lake trout are slow because the ice has blown out. Let's take a look at the ice report. We do have ice in the UP. Of course, it's starting to break up all over with this weather we've had, but the safer ice is up north down in the southern part of the state. Zilch, would not recommend even trying it. Look at our snow map. See the snow there, nothing down in the lower part of the state. And if it does fall, it's not going to last long. There still is snowmobiling, of course, up in the UP, and you can find it in the northern lower. Now, as far as the deer go, look at the winter severity index. There has been some problems in the west end of the UP, but most of the rest of the state, if the weather holds and doesn't get worse, it looks like the deer are going to be okay. So that's the scoop. Now, I'm not saying this is a pretty time of year. In fact, when you get your eyes checked and they go this or this, well, take a look. Is this better than this? You want to check that again? Would you rather have this or this? I don't know about you folks, but I am itching for spring, for summer. But this might be a good time if this weekend is so crummy, you know, clean out your tackle box. Get ready for those summer activities because, boy, when that sun comes out, it's a great place to be. See you next week.